Okay, so you're like making your way through Ulysses, right? Enjoying the first couple chapters, getting into the groove.
Yeah, finding that rhythm.
Exactly. And then, bam, episode 3, Proteus hits you.
Like a wave.
Totally. And suddenly it's like Joyce just decided to make things as dense and confusing as possible.
It's definitely a shift, that's for sure. A lot of readers hit that episode and they're like, wait, what just happened?
For sure. It can feel practically impossible to understand. If that's you, don't worry, you are not alone.
Not at all. This deep dive is all about navigating those choppy waters. Believe it or not, Proteus, even though it's tough, it's brilliant. Really.
That's what we're here to uncover, and thankfully we've got Chris Reich's insights to guide us. He does a phenomenal job breaking Ulysses down on his YouTube channel.
He really does. Right away, he makes this point about Proteus that I think is crucial.
Yeah.
Because if you want to understand this episode, you got to understand the figure it's named after.
Okay, so the Greek sea god, Proteus. For those of us who might need a little refresher.
Basically, imagine a god who can change into anything.
Yeah.
Animals, the elements, whatever. He's also supposed to know everything, past, present, future, the whole deal.
The ultimate know-it-all.
Except, good luck getting him to give you a straight answer.
So that's what we're dealing with here. Joyce is being intentionally slippery.
Exactly. It's like he's reflecting the very nature of Proteus and how he's writing. Just like pinning down this god is practically impossible. Nailing down a single meaning in Proteus, especially on a first read, it's going to be tough.
So it's less about like deciphering a code and more about what? Just going along for the ride.
Pretty much.
Hmm.
But Reich does give us some helpful clues. He says to watch out for those sudden jumps, like 1 minute Steven's thinking about this, next minute it's something totally different.
Oh yeah, the time shifts too. Like, how does Joyce even do that with words?
Right, and he'll even throw in these hints about things that won't even happen until way later in the book. It's wild.
It's almost like he's playing with us. Okay, anything else? Or is that basically it for clues?
Well, there's this other thing Reich points out. It seems kind of out there, but it's about connecting the name Proteus to the word protein.
Hold on, proteins, like what we learned about in biology class, what's that got to do with any of this?
Okay, so think about it. Proteins, those are complex things, always changing their shape. They're vital for life, but they can also misfold and cause huge problems, right?
Like in Contagion, that scene where they're trying to figure out that horrible virus, and it all comes down to a protein that's like gone rogue.
Precisely. That whole idea of both creation and chaos you see in proteins, it's there in Proteus too.
You're saying the episode itself is like one big, constantly shifting protein.
In a way, yeah, like it's folding and unfolding right in front of you.
Yeah.
It's that sense of constant change.
Wow. So Joyce is saying that even the tiniest things, the building blocks of life, they can be beautiful and destructive all at once.
Exactly. And Wright's point is, don't get so caught up trying to analyze every tiny little detail in Proteus that you miss the overall experience.
It's more about just letting go and seeing where the current takes you, huh?
Yes. Embrace the disorientation, allow yourself to get a bit lost in Stephen's head. Because ultimately, Proteus is about capturing how fluid our thoughts are, how we jump between ideas, just like that ever-changing sea.
You know, it's funny you mentioned getting lost in Stephen's head because there's this moment early in Proteus that always gets me. Reich points it out too. Stephen's thinking about how much what we see shapes what we believe.
Oh yeah, that inescapable influence line.
Exactly. And then, get this, what does he do? Closes his eyes and starts walking down the beach like he's blind.
Such a Joyce move, isn't it? Like, talk about a gut punch to the reader, right? Seriously. And it's not just a cool image. It gets at something so central to Proteus. It's all about perception, right? How much of what we believe is really just based on what we see or what we think we see.
And you can't talk about sight and perception in Ulysses without talking about Joyce's own vision problems, right? Oh, absolutely. Knowing how much he struggled with his eyesight just adds this whole other layer to those moments with Stephen. Like when Stephen's questioning if we can even trust what we see.
It's like we're not just in Stephen's head anymore, It's like Joyce is right there with him, wrestling with those same questions.
We're getting a perspective on a perspective, like one of those Russian nesting dolls.
Totally. And you have to think, all the pain Joyce went through, those eye surgeries without anesthesia, Wright compares it to Beethoven losing his hearing.
Whoa, yeah. Composing masterpieces while going deaf. Both these geniuses struggling with the loss of a sense that was so vital to their art. It's honestly kind of mind-blowing.
It really is. And I think it speaks to why Proteus is so challenging, but also so rewarding. We're not just reading a story, we're getting a glimpse into the mind of someone who's wrestling with these huge questions.
Okay, so where do we even start trying to untangle all of that? It feels like there's just so much going on in Proteus beneath the surface.
Well, Reich points out a few key themes that I think can really help us navigate this episode. And one of them actually connects back to something we saw earlier in Ulysses. Remember that line of Stephen's, "History is a nightmare."
Oh, yeah. History is a nightmare from which I am trying to awake. It's such a powerful line.
Exactly. Keep that in mind as you're reading Proteus, because history is everywhere in this episode. But it's often jumbled, fragmented, almost like it's being filtered through a dream, or maybe even that nightmare Stephen was talking about.
So the episode itself is mirroring that feeling of being trapped by the past.
Precisely. And it's not just history.
Yeah.
Think about the setting Sandymount Strand. It's this place where the tide's constantly coming in and going out, right?
That constant cycle of the ocean.
Right. And Reich points out how that reflects another key theme, this cycle of birth, life, and death.
Which makes a lot of sense, given that Stephen's grieving his mother and struggling with his own mortality, right?
Exactly. And then there's this other thread running through the episode that Reich highlights, the father-son relationship. We see it in Stephen's interactions with his own father, Simon Dedalus.
And then, of course, later on, we'll see it with Bloom, too.
Right. Like he's got these different father figures. And I think that theme will become even more significant as we move through Ulysses.
It's incredible how Joyce can weave all these complex themes into an episode that's also so rooted in the immediacy of Stephen's thoughts, you know? Like, we're experiencing everything right alongside him.
It's a testament to his skill as a writer, for sure. And Reich makes a really important point that I think we should keep in mind. He says we shouldn't just pay attention to the themes themselves, but to how Stephen is engaging with them.
What do you mean?
Well, notice how Stephen often observes things from a distance, like with a sense of detachment. It's almost as if he's watching the world go by instead of participating in it.
Like when he visits his uncle's family, right? They're obviously going through a tough time, but Stephen's just there.
Exactly. He's there physically, but it's like he's watching them through a window.
Yeah, really present.
Right. And that sense of detachment, that inability to fully connect, I think that's a key insight into Stephen as a character.
Yeah.
Like there's a part of it that's missing, a void he's trying to fill but can't quite reach.
And here's where things get really interesting, because Reich suggests that this missing piece in Stephen might actually reflect something missing in Joyce's own life. So this missing piece, this void, does Reich give us anything more concrete, or is it more like up to us as readers to figure out what's going on there?
It's definitely open to interpretation.
Yeah.
But Reich does offer some clues. He points out that even with all his intelligence, his way with words, Stephen doesn't quite seem to get it when it comes to life.
Like he's missing that basic connection to what it means to be human.
Yeah, exactly. And Reich suggests that this disconnect Stephen feels could come from Joyce's own experiences. Think about it. Joyce had really complex relationships with his family, his home country, even his religion.
Yeah, he was kind of wrestling with a lot of big questions himself.
Absolutely. So it makes you wonder, right? Maybe Proteus, with all its uncertainty, its searching, it's reflecting Joyce's own struggle to make sense of things.
It's almost comforting, you know, to think that even someone like James Joyce, a literary genius, dealt with self-doubt, that feeling of something missing. It makes Proteus and Stephen way more relatable.
Absolutely. It reminds us that these are universal questions. Even the most brilliant minds grapple with them. And it just makes Stephen's journey through Ulysses all the more compelling. What's he searching for? Will he find it? Keeps you on the edge of your seat.
And we can't forget it's not just Stephen's journey, right? Reich hints that when we get to Bloom, his experience of the world is going to be totally different.
Totally. It's like Joyce is giving us two sides of the same coin. Reich even talks about this scene where Stephen's looking at a statue, wondering if Eve would have a navel. Later, Bloom sees the same statue and has this completely different reaction. It's subtle, but those contrasting viewpoints add so much to the story.
So as we move past Proteus and into the rest of Ulysses, we should be thinking about how other characters, especially Bloom, see things differently than Stephen does.
Exactly. Does Bloom have that missing piece that Stephen and maybe even Joyce were searching for? Pay attention to how Bloom interacts with the world, how he finds joy in everyday moments, the kind of things Stephen seems to miss.
It's those little things that really bring Ulysses to life.
They really do.
This deep dive has been amazing. Seriously, so much to think about. Proteus might be a challenge, but it's definitely the key to unlocking Ulysses.
Couldn't agree more. And remember, there's no right or wrong way to interpret Ulysses. As you keep reading, Just pay attention to what speaks to you. Ask yourself questions. Let the words wash over you. It's like that walk along Sandy Mount Strand full of unexpected twists and turns. Enjoy the